Welcome to the Write Good Books podcast, the audio companion to WriteGoodBooks.com, with your host Jason Bougger.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the podcast. It's Jason. I'm joined again by our awesome co-host, Scott Michael Childers. How are you this fine day, Mr. Awesome?
I am awesome! Oh wow, I choked on that one.
Maybe we should save that for a pacing one. Okay. So last time we talked about, you okay over there?
I'm fine.
Okay,
continue
great.
on, sir.
Last time we talked about some general advice on having a website for authors. You know, you're an author, should you have a website? We both said yes. So this time we're going to talk about the more technical aspect of it, setting it up, and our opinions on how to host it, and kind of go over a little bit of the software and hosting plans we've used. Does that sound like a good plan?
It sounds like a plan. We'll judge it at the end.
Sure we will. So we said last time we think you should have a domain name that's as close to your name or brand as you can get. So if you haven't done this before, you purchase a URL or a domain name, and then you have to find a way to host it. So it's kind of two separate things.
Yeah, unless your hosting plan includes domain name purchase.
Right.
That we're jumping ahead there.
Yeah. As a quick disclaimer, there are free services like WordPress.com or .org. I think it's .com.
I believe it's WordPress.com. I think WordPress.org allows you to download their software.
Mm-hmm. So WordPress.com, Blogspot.com, where you'd have your domain name .blogspot.com, and we don't recommend that. We think it's better to purchase your own domain name so you have control over it.
Yeah. I think those choices are a lot better than some other choices.
Oh, yeah.
But I do think the full domain name is your best choice.
And you can still use WordPress and Bougger with your own domain name. As far as what type of hosting to use, I think some of it depends on what your goal is for your site.
Absolutely.
For example, my sites are all WordPress based, so I ended up using Bluehost since they're a pretty friendly, WordPress friendly hosting site, and they're one of them where, well, most of these probably allow you to purchase the domain name and purchase storage space or plans, I suppose. But so I purchased both through there. In the past, I've hosted on Blogger.com, which was free. I just had to own the domain name and transfer it to the blog. What have you used over the years?
Over the years, I've hosted with a traditional web host, and so I would install a WordPress installation on top of that, and I manage that myself.
You installed it yourself?
I installed it myself. I bought a domain name from a registrar. Done that in the past. That was back when I had time. It worked well for what I wanted. But then as I moved on, my demands on what I wanted from my website were a little bit different. I had, at that time, rarely more money than time. And so I went with a more turnkey solution. I went to Squarespace. And the reason I went there is because they had built-in e-commerce. Just in whatever plan I was buying, I had a built-in web store. And then I got my domain name. I was able to buy a domain name through them as well. I do want to put in a disclaimer. Maybe we'll put this at the beginning. We're receiving no compensation from any of these places we mentioned today.
Right.
But if they would like to advertise with us, contact Jason.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And as a supplement to that statement, I do have Bluehost affiliate links on my site.
All right. Disclaimer taken care of.
Disclaimer noted.
So we talked about what you want from your website. We'll kind of decide where you go. Like Jason and I, the e-commerce was more important to me than some other choices. Where Jason, you have multiple sites running off of one host. Is that right? Yeah,
that was part of the reason I chose Bluehost too. You purchase one hosting plan, and then you can purchase as many domains. Well, they claim unlimited domains on top of that hosting. So I've got my 3. My wife has a handful of them too, and all we pay extra is for registering the domain every year. So the storage is all one plan, which is very convenient.
And it also depends on what your technical level of expertise is. For me, like I mentioned, I didn't want to spend a lot of time customizing the look and feel of my website where I used to before. It used to be important to me. That's why I went with the previous solution. Now it's like I'm okay with canned template type stuff because I spend very little time on my website as it is.
Is your template from the provider, or is it on top of WordPress or something like that?
My Squarespace templates are with the provider.
Okay.
So I didn't have to pay any extra for my template. And templates nowadays, depending on your source, you can do drag and drop and rearrange. So for me, I got a decent site. Looks good enough for me. I may tinker with it later on, but for me it was, I've got a website with an integrated e-commerce solution. That was what I was looking for. Plus, there was a deal with, other podcasts had deals with Squarespace at the time. So I got a discount on my first year.
Well, that's cool. That was how I found out about Bluehost too, podcasts I listened to, and then on top of Bluehost for the host, then I use WordPress, and I went with something called the Genesis framework, which is a WordPress add-on module, something like that. But they're heavy on SEO and customizing, so you buy that framework, and then there were templates I got for that. So I got a template for Write Good Books and Theme of Absence, and they're both the same template. I just customized. And then my author site, I have an author-specific template that I bought because that gives you the individual book links and all the typical stuff I want for my author site. And you can listen to our last podcast for what we put on our author sites,
So we've thrown a lot at you, dear listener.
Yes.
And as you can tell, there are lots of different approaches that you can take. You can take a turnkey approach, very simple. You don't need to know a lot of tech. You can just follow the menus. Or you can take something with a little bit of tech knowledge, or even just a willingness to tinker. And you can do something a lot more involved, like Jason's, where he's really getting a lot more out of his hosting solution than I am, to be honest, because he's taking the time to do it. And all of this stuff can be learned. We're throwing a lot at him.
Yeah.
We're throwing a lot at you. We know that. So we expect you to listen maybe once, maybe twice, and research some of this stuff on your own and ask questions.
Yeah. There's for easy solutions. There's also WYSIWYG sites.
Well,
what you see is what you get.
Yeah.
They're drag and drop. Don't design like I think Weebly and Wix are two I've used previously, and those are real drag and drop and put your images in. Really easy to use, and you get a decent looking site out of those.
Yeah, and like we mentioned before, there's the WordPress where you don't have and even those I think you can get your domain name and pay a little extra. But there's free sites out there that will let you do at least starting out. And I'm just going to throw this out here. If you own your domain name, then it doesn't matter the other thing, because you can always point your domain name to wherever you are hosting in whatever type.
Right.
Like I could take a domain name I bought 3 years ago, and if I decide I'm leaving my current host and doing something else, I don't have to send out a ton of email or a ton of publicity saying I've moved. I could just redirect scottmichaelchilders.com to wherever it's hosting.
There you go. Which is another reason you should purchase a domain name instead of using a .blogspot or something like that.
Yeah, .wordpress, whatever. It just makes it future-proofs your web presence a little bit more.
Right. So, is this always on the up and up, or are there...
No.
Are there potential scams and things like that?
There are, beware there be dragons.
Yes. Just like with the publishing, web publishing is full of predators as well.
Right. So do your research. Look for reviews of the potential web host. I tend not to respond to messages that come to my email saying, hey, we've got a web hosting solution for you.
Right.
I tend to ignore those. I also want to warn people that there are people out there who will create your website for you, and they'll provide design and all that for you. They'll offer that for a price. Some of them are legit. Some of them you get a pretty good looking website, and they'll hand it over to you for you to just do your blogging or posting, and they've done all the setup. However, there are people out there that will say, hey, I'll design your webpage for you, and they don't. They disappear. Or they do, but they still control access, and they charge you a maintenance fee every year, or if you want to make a change, you have to go through them. So be careful if you're looking for outside help, especially on any of these. Check contracts. If they don't want to do work under contract, don't work with them.
Yeah, make sure you're always in control of your content, and they don't have access to your account details, really.
Yeah. And so, like I said, if you're scared about it, there's plenty of easy ways for you to set up your website without needing intervention. We talked about those earlier. And then once you get kind of the hang of what's out there, then you can hunt for assistance or not.
And I'll add, most paid services provide some level of support.
Yeah.
When I was on GoDaddy, I don't remember if I ever needed to use their support. On Bluehost I did, and I could praise that all day long. I remember it was Father's Day at 2 a.m. and I was trying to move my author site to a new WordPress template, and somehow hosed the whole thing, and I don't know, maybe it was 2 in the morning. It took down my other sites too. I don't know what I did. So I went to support, and I instantly got somebody in a chat room. A little later, he called me it was quicker that way, and within an hour we got everything back online. They went to the last backup and just got it all restored. So their support is great, and they're maybe a little more expensive than some of the others, but it's worth it for the support if you're treating your website as a business, which with this blog I am, so I don't mind having that extra support. Or if you know what you're doing, you may not need support at all.
Heck, if you know what you're doing, you may be running a web server in your own office space, and you just go in and check that disk drives are spinning every so often.
Right, which is my day job. La-di-da for me.
Yeah. And, I mean, I've seen people hack together their own web servers on their own work computers.
Sure.
Using, they use Dropbox as a web host for something, and they made it work. So there's lots of solutions out there.
And are there any services we left off that people might want to look into? I kind of touched on this before. If a lot of these, like Blogger.com and Wix and Weebly, some of those free ones, they might offer a premium subscription as well. But if you own your domain name, you can transfer it to those sites free of charge, at least within last time I did it a few years ago. So you may want to just do that if you don't want to pay a monthly fee for expensive hosting. Just kind of up to you. If you're just starting as a writer and you just want a placeholder site, I would say go to wherever you want to go, GoDaddy or Bluehost or Squarespace or whoever, and just buy a cheap domain name, just so it's planted now in case you want to do something with it eventually too.
Oh yeah. I mean, and a web registrar. We mentioned a couple. I use Hover.com. That's my registrar of choice, and you can buy those without having your web host inside. So even if you know, like, the name of your next book.
Yeah, I've heard that suggested.
Some people will buy domain names for their book titles, either to direct people to the book-specific page on their main website, or to just redirect to the author site in general. And, you can buy domain names cheap, and sometimes like $10-15 for a year.
Right.
I will mention this at this point. They'll offer deals if you buy for 10 years or whatever. I tend to not do that because in 10 years it's easy to forget. Oh yeah, what's my login information?
Yeah.
Where especially if you're working with a group of people that help you with your marketing. Now, you as an individual author, it's more than likely that you might be using the same email, but it's possible that your email address changed in 10 years.
Right.
And I had an instance in my organization an email that was used to log into the registrar, that company does not exist anymore that provided that email. So we can't get in the normal way to get our domain name changed. So, yeah, long-term things, yeah, I'll lock this in. A lot could happen in 10 years. And you may not be able to get it back after that
right,
10.
and prices changed. Technology continues to cost less. You may not want to lock in a price for 10 years.
Yeah.
My first host, it was crazy expensive. I think I had a little Pink Floyd fan page, and I think that cost like, I want to say $250 a year or something like that back then. And, so I wouldn't recommend locking in a price either for more than a couple of years. You might beat inflation, but
Maybe.
you never know. So, I don't know. I hope we covered some of the basics. Go to the contact page and send us questions. We've both been involved in website building for 20 plus years.
Each.
And each.
Yeah.
And love to answer questions about it. My day job's still in IT, and Scott has a long IT background as well, so treat us as a resource if you want. Send us some questions, and until then, you have any closing thoughts?
Apparently not.
We'll take that one as a no. So we'll be back next time, and until then, check us out on the web at www.writegoodbooks.com/podcast. See ya.
See ya.com.
.com.